This video contains spoilers for Nimona. If you want to watch this movie on your own accords, then please do so and come back to this video. Otherwise, thank you and enjoy.
You know what I enjoy in my movies and shows? Villains. It's a commonly agreed on thing by most people that the villain is objectively cooler than the hero, except for a few outliers. Thanos, Darth Vader, Sauron, Joker, Hades, and, Furry Malthael. Whether they be incompetent, sympathetic, understandable, or the smuggest motherfucker to f*** your mom, evil comes in all shapes and sizes, especially in the wonderful world of animation. A bad villain can ruin anything, but a great villain can salvage something more. Such callous, conniving charisma is something I think can only be brought to life through the unlimited power of animation. Being bad has never felt so good. Why else do you think I enjoy something like Destroy All Humans? And I can't think of a better villain of animation than Netflix Entertainment. Or I guess a better villain to the general public for that matter, because Netflix has proven themselves a formidable adversary to the animation community on a level only rivaled by HBO Max. From removing password sharing and incorporating ads, all the shitty shows they've released that are either simply unenjoyable or spit in the face of animation. Or just mangle an already existing masterpiece. Can anyone say Netboy Bopflix and Deathflix? They're coming for Avatar The Last Airbender. And of course cancelling shows before they could either see the public or reach their full potential just for some more Big Mouth and Stranger Things. And Odd Ones Out.
Too old to order off the kids menu.
But wait, I hear you asking, isn't this about a salvage Bluesky movie? Why am I crapping on Netflix already? Didn't I already do that by giving a mediocre LGBT cartoon some free promotion? Well, yes, but I'm not here to crap on some show some guy spent probably the best part of his life going through hell just to put it on a streaming service only for it to be quickly forgotten and then cancelled a few months later, no. Oops! Or talk about why animation is dying for the umpteenth time and put the blame on streaming services because, honey, it already did. I'm gonna talk about one of the most interesting animated films to come out in terms of its production history, surviving development hell for half a decade and receiving basically zero marketing from Netflix because f*** you. A fun adventure from the villain's perspective since Destroy All Humans and Megamind, Nimona. No, not that Nimona, this Nimona. Adapted from the acclaimed graphic novel, which itself is adapted from the webcomic series by N.D. Stevenson, who's also known for that She-Ra reboot on Netflix, whether that is a good or a bad sign, you're welcome to take your pick, is a fantasy animated action film that came out on Netflix recently on June 30th, 2023. I'm pretty sure the people watching this know the story of Nimona's development, but in case you don't, let me give you an obligatory rundown because this film's development is rather fascinating. Originally, the film was going to be animated by Bluesky. Yeah, the f***ing Ice Age studio was supposed to make this. That's about as unexpected as Illumination making the Mario movie, or Sony making the Spider-Verse. It would have been notable for having an LGBT character and a same-sex kiss, which, yeah, it's not like we don't have enough of that shit nowadays. It was supposed to come out last year in 2022, but then Disney shut down Bluesky and Nimona with it. Probably because the higher-ups were pissing and their pants at the possibility of a main character being gay and thought, alright, into the wood chipper. Now if I'm gonna be real with you, pimp, I never gave that much of a shit about Bluesky. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm pretty sure they made some good movies. I mean, I haven't seen the Penis movie, but I do remember growing up with Ice Age and feeling burnt out by the third movie when they brought in the baby mammoth. What was her name? Bitches?
Bitches.
But compared to someone like DreamWorks or even Illumination, they've always been in the background for me. They've mostly made, in my opinion, subpar movies that had basically no cultural impact, despite having 5 f***ing Ice Age movies that raked them billions of dollars. And I honestly don't understand why people cried of them shutting down when they've been shoveling shit since Ice Age 3. Like, if you're gonna see anyone tell you that Ice Age 4 or 5 is their favorite animated film of all time, yeah, I didn't think so.
Know your f***ing place, trash!
Anyway, back to the story. At the last second, a savior came from the shadows. Annapurna Pictures. You know, the Sausage Party guys? You know, the movie with the ending where they partake in an orgy? Now, if that doesn't sound like a mark of quality, I don't know what is. Hey, wait a minute, they didn't animate Sausage Party, that was some other company. Shut up! They didn't animate Nimona either, they just salvaged it. So it's an Annapurna animated movie by my logic. Well, at least that gives me an excuse to use Sausage Party footage, so I hope you like that gimmick for this video.
Uh-oh. Light bulb. Yes? No, not f***ing you, dummy.
Anyway, Annapurna was able to pick up the film and decided to release it via Netflix. Ah, Netflix, the perfect place to get your animations out there for the world to see. Animation at its finest. Well, at least Netflix is better than HBO Max. Oh, hang on, I'm getting a call. Yellow. Wait, what? It's just Max now? Oh. Oh, and they got rid of Clarence and Foster's Home? In the regular show movie? Okay, thanks for correcting me. Bye-bye. Damn you. God damn all of you! You know, this whole story reminds me of how you salvage animatronics in Pizzeria Simulator. Well, you know what they say, one man's trash in the back alley is another man's scrap trap. Now, before I go ahead, I have to say, I have practically zero attachment to the Nimona comic, nor any of Stevenson's works beyond reading the first 10 pages at a Barnes & Noble, in the same section as young adult classics like Nubia and this book is gay. Personally, in terms of graphic novels, I'm more of a hard boner myself. And aside from bone, I'm still waiting for the day someone has the balls to adapt I Hate Fairyland to a cartoon show. So it'll be interesting for me to go into this film with a fresh perspective and see just how this film holds up on its own merits. Today, I'm going to take a look at Nimona to see if it was all worth the wait, and if this film truly deserved to see the light of day, or throw it into the incinerator where Blue Sky's dog shit films belong.
You, meanies.
I was gonna save the Crash Twinsanity music for when I talked about villainous since it's in America now, but f it. That's a story for another day. Also, feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see me be more of a dastardly evildoer towards animation and video games sometimes. Now suit up, baddies and badettes, because I'm gonna take a villainated look at Nimona. So the film opens up with a storybook narration. Remind you of anything? Long ago, a great knight named Glorith, along with an army of knights, once defended their kingdom from a terrible monster from the shadows that sought to come and devour anything they held dear. Glorith confronted the monster, and with these sacred words, she banished the monster to the Shadow Realm where it belonged. These words will come up in the end, so remember that for later. After the monster was defeated, a wall was created around the kingdom and Glorith's knights set up an institution of law enforcement and heroics, or the Knightstitution as I will call it from now on, to train future knights and uphold their honor and protect their realm from any future evil. Now, 1,000 years later, the realm has evolved into a technologically advanced city complete with cars, TVs, holograms, and cereal. It's kinda like Arcane's Piltover, but not really. Anyway, our tale begins on the night of knighting a new knight, the badass bad boy to walk the backstreets, and soon into the realm of vile and vigorousness, BeeMaister Blackheart. Played by Riz Ahmed. If that name doesn't ring a bell to you, he was the bad guy in a noble knight and soon-to-be wannabe Swain cosplayer. I mean, he's even missing an arm. You can't convince me that Riot looked at the graphic novel and saw their new rework of Swain, who aside from possessing one of the best written names I've had the pleasure to say on this channel, BeeMaister Blackheart, was once an up-and-coming knight from a background of poverty, along with his maybe more than friend and descendant of great Glorith herself, Ambrosius Goldenloin, played by that one YouTuber who came out as gay. Oh, wrong image. He's played by the Asian one, Eugene Liang of Try Guys fame. More like Try Gays, am I right, fellas? Anyway, BeeMaister was to be knighted by the queen, under the name BeeMaister Boldheart. Yeah, in the movie they changed his name to Boldheart, and nobody in the movie refers to him as Blackheart, but I still refer to him as Blackheart because BeeMaister Blackheart is a f***ing cool name to say. Anyway, on the night of his knighting, something strange happens. BeeMaister's sword malfunctions and turns to a green laser gun, causing the murder of the queen and for him to lose his arm by the hand of Ambrosius, casting him out from the kingdom without judgment and labeled as a villain by the Knightstitution. Insert V for Vendetta reference here. A guy cast into villainy for a murder of a high figure that he didn't even commit? Where have I seen that before? However, the real star of the show is not the honorable yet avarice Ambrosius, nor the bastardized and benighted BeeMaister. That honor goes to this next character, his recently appointed sidekick, the titular Nimona, played by Chloe Grace Moretz of Tom and Jerry fame. Oh yeah, and Kick-Ass. Yeah, if any of you know these guys' works I've mentioned, then that's a stunning cast right there. You know, if I had a nickel for every Netflix girl named after a Pokemon trainer, I'd have 2 nickels. Which ain't really a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Also, if I had one for every Blue Sky villain with a missing hand. Anyway, so now Ballister sits alone, waiting for the day to unframe himself and take his revenge on the Nightstitution. Revenge! Until today, when Nimona shows up to apply herself to be Ballister's sidekick, to help him f*** shit up and take Ballister's revenge! What glorious adventures and battles await our dastardly duo? Tune in next week for the Mega Mindorious adventures of Nimona! So to praise the movie, I actually like the opening 10 minutes here compared to what I've read in the graphic novel. Like, the book's original opening was just Nimona showing up in Ballister's lair and then getting recruited. Only after do we get Ballister's origin story. I like that they made the origin scene come first, which allows us to familiarize ourselves with these characters, getting to know the situation, and overall it feels cohesive and it flows naturally. Too bad everything else in this movie's trash though. Guys, I have a serious confession to tell you that I've been keeping for the longest time. I lied to you. I actually did read the Nimona comic prior to watching this movie, and it's okay. I read the book like 2 weeks before the film came out, and when I got done reading it, my first thought was, this is what Blue Sky's going to adapt? It was a fine read, not that anyone watching this would know, because I'm pretty sure the fans of this movie didn't even read the source material. Though to be fair, I'm not much of a reader myself, so what am I even saying? Like the book, it wasn't terrible, but it also wasn't anything groundbreaking either. It was just another one of those generic government bad stories that you've probably seen done before and better, see so V for Vendetta or Mage Seeker. So before I get into the contents, I have to say that I will be comparing this film to the graphic novel, but I will try my best to judge this film on its own merits. Probably. I feel like the idea of Nimona could have worked better if the original comic had like 7 issues or even a TV show, because there isn't really a lot to work with the original source. When I heard Netflix was reviving this movie, I got a bit optimistic. Sure, it was based on a story from the creator of She-Ra, which I haven't seen, but the general consensus I've heard online was that it was absolute dog shit, so I sure as hell ain't watching that. But I thought with Netflix buying Nimona and with the animators of Blue Sky continuing this, they would take their time to polish it, maybe flesh out the story more, to truly make it their Spider-Verse. I mean, a villainous adventure romp like the bad guys sounds like a lot of fun. What could possibly go wrong?
Literally everything.
To say I was disappointed with this movie would be an understatement. It was so mid. I didn't think I'd see a movie that would make the book look like a masterpiece, but here I am. Nimona is many things. It's another one of those government bad stories like the original with a dash of Rise of Skywalker and Steven Universe thrown in there for good measure. Okay, well, it's not the worst animated thing I've seen on Netflix. Hell, it's far from Blue Sky's worst movie. But much like something like The Owl House, I feel this movie is just, and I hate to say this word, overhyped as hell. Let's take a look at this animation, shall we? With the recent surge of cel-shaded animated movies thanks to films like Spider-Verse and Piss and Biss The Last Wish, animation is starting to look more colorful and varied than ever before. I mean, beats the realistic gobshite of yesteryear. It feels like the boom of cel-shaded games from the 2000s all over again. With cel-shading, films like Spider-Verse, Mitchell vs. Machines, Pussy Shoes 2, Arcane, and recently TMNT have been able to achieve distinct visual styles that are able to stick out from each other. But whenever I see Nimona, I feel like I'm looking at a cel-shaded game, or watching League of Super Evil, if anyone remembers that show. That is to say, it's not really all that impressive. I will admit that the character designs in this movie look a lot better compared to the original book. The artwork, aside from Nimona having a haircut that made her look like she survived Blood Meridian, if you know you know, it had a sketchy and angular art style reminiscent of Adventure Time. While this movie looks more appealing, it's very Disney-ish and kinda generic. Would the original art style have translated to 3D? Possibly, see so the Pee-Pee movie, but I'll stick with the cards I'm giving. I will say that I like the expressions in this movie. They're very cartoony and they make them all pop. Also, and I hate to nitpick, what the f is up with these smiles, bro? They look like those memes where they edit toothy smiles onto characters in some app or some and they look just so goofy. Like, don't tell me this is the face of someone that eats It's not the ugliest animated movie out there, don't get me wrong, but visually it kinda looks dull. The lighting in most scenes, especially the rhino chase, looks really flat and reminds me a lot of the worst shot in Pussy Shoes 2. There are some shots where the lighting works, but those are like 1 in a million, and for the most part the lighting just simply looks unfinished. I've seen SFM animations with better lighting than this. Also, if you're a fan of how these films and shows go 12 frames a second during the fight scenes, you might be disappointed with this one. They only do the Puss in Boots type animation with the frame drops for like 1 scene only and nowhere else in the film.
kicking in.
In terms of cel-shaded animated movies, it's probably the least great looking out of all of them. It's serviceable, but it's like a B or C tier at best. Also, this city design sucks. I'm sorry, but the medieval fantasy aesthetic with the techno stuff like the TVs, the phones, and the flying cars just doesn't mesh together at all. It looks really confusing to look at. It feels like they saw Arcane's Piltover and Zon and how beautifully they made the city look and wanted to copy their homework without knowing about artistic consistency or the grueling effort the team behind that show went to make everyone feel like they belong in both cities. So you get this mishmash of differing locations and designs that contrast too heavily with each other and makes the city look ugly as sin. It's kind of like putting an iPhone or a Lamborghini in ancient Egypt. If anything, I think they should have gone for a steampunk aesthetic for the technology, but that's neither here nor there. The soundtrack is alright. There aren't too many memorable tracks in this film. It's mostly the standard orchestral movie fare, but there is a bit of punk rock in there, but not really much to satisfy my buds. If they had a dose of Sabaton or Bad Wolves, I probably would have liked it.
Next train arriving in 3 minutes. Remember, if you see something, slay something.
Hey wait, I know that saxophone song!
That's your dick, and that is gay porn. Okay.
As for the writing, I really did not laugh at the jokes in this movie. And I know humor is subjective, but most of the time the humor of this film just came across as annoying and made me feel bored most of the time. Like, we all know the classic Blue Sky joke schlop special with piss and and dabs and penis and pretty much every kids movie tick that you can think of. But watching those jokes in those movies at least didn't make me bored. Like, I'm guilty of finding poop and penis funny once in a while, leave me alone. I've seen some people compare this movie's humor to Shrek. They may both be subversive, but at least in Shrek, the humor wasn't as irritating and it kinda adds to the charm of it since the first movie was supposed to be a subversion of Disney tropes. But in this movie, the jokes come off less charming and more arrogantly smug, which reminds me more of Hell of a Boss, especially the jokes delivered by Nimona. Or at least they were kind enough to not make Nimona spout sex and jokes 24/7, unlike some certain punk I know. The only character that made me laugh in this movie was Todd.
You think I give a about PB or J? This. I'm gonna kick your ass. How you like them apples?
And also my favorite part of the whole thing was when Nimona transformed into Ballister for like 30 seconds to get rid of some guards. Because that scene has a certain energy that reminded me a lot of the book that I might bring up later. I gotta say, if it wasn't for the production history of Blue Sky and people hyping this up as Blue Sky's Spider-Verse, probably hoping that they could suck the last tit of goodness out of a corpse, I probably would have written this movie as a knockoff of The Bad Guys and watched something else, like Klaus or Love, Death, and Robots, also on Netflix. Because the story of this movie is really just a generic fare. Even if we ignore that this is based on a book, the story in this movie is really nothing special and not that much of substance. Finding something positive for me to say about this is like trying to find an unused condom on the street. It's just another one of those government bad stories you've seen before, like I said, but not as executed well like the other examples I brought up. The movie's plot is just too simple to be called deep and doesn't really do anything interesting with tackling an oppressive government. To compare to the game Mage Seeker, that game used the structure and ideas of this type of story to develop its themes of leadership, hope, and standing up to the oppressed. The idea of Ballister fighting for the poor folk of the city for better treatment and equality of the poor is brought up and then dropped as the film goes on, like after the first 10 minutes, because it's always jumping from one scene to the next, making the pacing of this movie feel rushed. The best I can really compare it to in terms of pacing would be Transformers Rise of the Beasts, or better yet, Rise of Skywalker, because there's barely any slowdown when compared to the original story where the duo took a break from playmaking so Nimona's leg can heal after being pierced by an arrow. The movie also has this incredible lack of world building. Like, compared to the graphic novel, this movie is as barren as the Australian outback. It's been said that Ballister came from a place of poverty, something that hasn't been seen before with knights, but we don't see how the lower class is treated in the city. It's implied that those of higher class, i.e. the other knights, view the lower class as peasants. The thing about lower class standing up to the higher ups is never brought up in the story again after the first like 10 minutes. This part about Ballister is brought up and then forgotten, or what really bugs me the most is how this kingdom hasn't fallen into complete chaos following the death of the queen. Like, why aren't there riots in the streets? Why are we shown the Knights-Institution doing anything about this? What was even the point of the fucking queen if the Knights-Institution are the ones making the big choices around here? This movie just has these different ideas fighting with each other. On one side, it's about equality for the lower class, and on the other, it's about letting people be what they want to be, and they just don't really mesh at all. Probably because this movie has like 7 writers attached to it, so most of these ideas don't really get enough attention. To bring up V for Vendetta, that movie settles with one idea as its theme. The idea of giving hope to the lower class people against the tyrannical dictatorship. allowing it to develop its themes much more easily. As a result, the movie feels a lot more cohesive, and even some of what you may call sidelined ideas actually tie in with the core of the film. There are no other ideas clashing with each other, and as a result, you get a tightly woven, tangible film that greatly delivers the message it wants and doesn't rush itself to the end, like Rise of Skywalker. It takes its time for the audience to understand. Really, what I'm trying to say is how an idea like this is executed comes down to the pacing. Or I guess to use a theme park analogy, Nimona is like a roller coaster. It may be fun, but you won't get as much substance out of it, whereas V for Vendetta is like the Tunnel of Love ride next to it. Made even worse by the fact that nothing this movie does is new or groundbreaking. If you've seen it in the movie, you know you saw it before, and I know everyone is used to the fact that a lot of works are being derivative, but even those derivative works provide interesting takes on already done tropes and cliches. But Nimona is really played out and generic, and they just resort to fucking copying scenes from other better movies, without any of the nuance that made them work. Like hell, the scene where Nimona sacrifices herself to save the city is just a one-to-one copy of Superman from Iron Giant. Okay, so what if the story's a derivative mess? It's about the growth of the characters, right? So how's that fair? Well, despite the movie being named after his flesh-forming sidekick, Ballister is certainly more of the main character than Nimona is. And this applied to the original book as well. Nimona is like the Gotrek to Ballister's Felix, if anyone understands that reference. After all, Ballister is the one on a quest for revenge. So the movie is more of a character study on him. While I do appreciate giving the most depth to the least annoying character in the story, it makes Nimona feel more flat as a character. She feels more sidelined in her own story, and her development doesn't get a lot of focus, only the part where she's spunky and wants to kill people. One thing I liked about the original story was Nimona and Bal's relationship and the dynamic, which kinda reminded me of Joker and Harley Quinn. Bal was already an established villain in the book with rules of his own because you know what they say.
Professionals have standards.
So him having a sidekick that doesn't follow rules made for an interesting dynamic. However, in the movie, their relationship just feels more awkward, especially since the villain aspect of Ballister is gone. Ballister's story in this film doesn't really feel as compelling to me because there's less challenges for him to overcome. After all, the original story wasn't about him just getting his revenge. It's about him growing as a person and a tactician. He doesn't develop any specific strategies that could help him prove his point to the Night Institution, and he mostly just goes along with Nimona's fuel for fighting, and when he does accept Nimona as a sidekick, his plans are not really that complex and are just plain easy. So there's basically no stakes. To compare it to Gotrek and Felix again, and by that I mean watching Pancras' video on it, Felix had to plan around Gotrek's taste for battle as the obstacle in his adventures, developing plans and making great use of an otherwise force of nature. Part of Ballister's development that made him interesting in the book to me was his growth as a tactician, because Ballister in the book is like a f***ing gangster, my dude. If my memory is correct, in the original, Ballister actually commits to the villain shtick that he's been labeled with. Like at one point, and this is not in the film, he steals a green techno gun and uses it to rob a bank, and uses Nimona as a distraction to cause chaos by telling her, "Nimona, turn into a dragon!" which also allowed him to prove his point to the Night Institution. It took him some time to commit to it, but he was still able to make the most out of what he has learned and the situation. But I don't really see that intelligence with Movie Bal. The book made him look like Megamind, whereas this one just feels nerfed. And because of how the story is focused on Bal, Nimona doesn't really get that much to grow on, and when the big sad moment comes around, it feels particularly clunky because just before, she was the same irritating, chaotic, punk-ass bitch throughout half the film's runtime. And this was a problem that applied to the graphic novel. I don't buy Nimona's development in this film. Like, the movie burns into your head numerous times that Nimona loves killing people and committing absolute crimes to the point of drawing at fantasies of murdering knights. Yet in this movie, she draws the line at kids? Since when was that ever a damn fact? Did it never come up to her that the more she kills knights, the more people are only gonna see her as a monster? Like, for glorious sake, Nimona, killing is not a love language. This makes Nimona's development in this film feel kinda contrived and clunky. Like, how am I supposed to buy it when this bloodthirsty, monster-eyed reject, Beast Boy knockoff self-insert cum stain just wants a friend when all she's been clamoring on about is of murdering knights and burning down the city? I don't know, it just doesn't sit right with me. Megamind pretty much did the whole supervillain really wants to make friends thing a lot better because once again, that movie had a focus on this idea and this movie's pacing is trash. I've actually seen people compare Nimona herself to Iron Giant, but again, that movie took its time to develop its themes by having the giant actually do stuff that changes his ways, making his sacrifice at the end all the more impactful. Anyway, speaking of characters, there's not really a lot of them in this movie, given that this is just a romp from start to finish. So most of the side characters don't really get that much development or are just used as plot devices. Nimona is the title character of the film. She's one of those cheery girl characters that likes destroying property, explosions, and killing people, an archetype that you've likely seen before. Harley Quinn, Tiny Tina for Borderlands, Tank Girl, Jinx. That is to say, League of Legends Jinx, not Arcane Jinx. She's spunky, energetic, and overall just wants to up. Nimona was kinda an annoying little bitch in the graphic novel that grinded my gears to no end on the same level as Crash and Eddie from Ice Age. And she still is here, but to a thankfully less irritating degree. Nimona is really as one-dimensional as I described her. She comes across like a hell of a boss character in that she's so insufferably smug and tryhard that it makes her kinda come across as unlikable. And she doesn't really offer much of a fresh take on her archetype other than just wanting to be herself compared to someone like Arcane Jinx or even Harley Quinn. She's a shapeshifter, able to turn into anything at will so long as it exists. Sharks, rhinos, ostriches, a 350 roid out Donkey Kong, and even other people, which...
Whoa, is that blackface, dude?
Oh yeah, and she's also immune to harm like arrows. How did she get these super magical powers, you may be asking? I don't know, the movie doesn't answer that. Though in the original, it was implied that she was either just born with it, or was replaced by a shape-shifting clone after falling sick.
What did he do to you?
You don't wanna fucking know.
Ballister Blackheart is another character in the film. As I said, he's a lot less entertaining and interesting in the movie compared to the original source. The Bal in the original was like a real mastermind, and he was the one that was secretly lusting for Ambrosius' golden loin, if you catch my drift. Compared to comic Bal, his story is more so predictable. Of course he's gonna get his revenge in the end, and of course he's gonna get his love interest, blah blah blah. Nothing more, nothing less. Ambrosius' golden loin is one of the most disappointing aspects of this entire film for me. He's Ballister's gay love interest, and that's about it. He's barely any screen time, and he does pretty much nothing of notice throughout this entire film, which really sucks because he was so much more in the original. I know it might be churlish for me to compare the film to the source material because this film is trying to be different and it probably forgot about the graphic novel as much as I did, but if I recall, Ambrosius in the original is one of the most interesting takes on a gay character I've seen in a while because he actually went through an arc. Yeah, me praising something for the way it writes his LGBT character? What a concept. Ambrosius in the original had like an egotistical, spoiled, and selfish personality reminiscent of Prince Charming from Shrek 2, and he fully believed Bal was a villain, and so he treated him like one. Before the accident, I think he and Bal had a lovers-rivals thing going on. It's only when he discovers the director's true intentions on Nimona does he question his duty to her. He was manipulated to be sure, but deep down, he still had some respect for Ballister, even going out of his way to meet him at a pub later in the book after being ordered to kill Nimona by the director. He didn't even want to hurt Bal in the accident that cost him his arm in the first place, but because he was caught up in his pride, and because that techno lance was heavy, he caused the breakup of his friendship/love, and now he bears plenty of insecurities behind a visage of golden glory. The book made Ambrosius a surprisingly tragic character and one of my favorites next to Bal, who had like the most important thing to him taken away by his pride and dedication to an otherwise flawed system. It's only in the end when Nimona attacks the city does he truly redeem himself. Thinking he hadn't done anything good in his life, he sacrifices himself against the monster. He stops running away and lives up to the city to give Ballister his chance to finally become a hero. Well, he and Bal survive in the end, but still. Also, I might be getting some of these details wrong, but I can't be bothered to go back to the library and reorder my copy of the book, so just go with it. Correct me in the comments if I get something wrong. This is why I think Nimona should have been a TV show instead of a movie. There's a few ideas from the original that were left out or changed that could work better in a show if the right talent is involved. We could have seen how the story went from Ambrosius' perspective, with him questioning the director's intentions more thoroughly and coping with how his relationship with Bal was brought down by his own ego. He's like League of Legends' Cassante if he actually went through a proper character arc, with a dash of Tony Stark thrown in for good measure. He was an insecure, greatly flawed character that went through a story about owning up to his mistakes. Granted, it wasn't perfect, but it's orders of magnitude a lot that I can say about a gay character than any other modern cartoon in the last 5 years. And for once, to me at least, it didn't feel like pandering, nor does it treat you like some kind of Twitter-addled idiot that solely watches kids media because they put gay people in it, unlike some other piece of shit on Netflix I know. This is called subtlety.
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Me, right?
I never thought I would see myself praising the creator of New Raw on Netflix, but I guess I'm here. I don't know, maybe this was written before they were choked up on drugs or some shit like that. But this movie's all like, PSYCH! We can't portray a gay character as a flawed narcissist douchebag with a character arc. What are you, a homophobe? Just make a new character and put all of his flawed traits into that one. Have him just know that Ballister's innocent and do nothing of importance for the rest of the movie. Just keep the gay part of him in there. No one's read the book our movie's based on. They're not gonna notice.
Oh, they'll notice.
The Garnet effect strikes again, folks. Because of the fact they put Ambrosius' flawed traits from the book into a new character, it feels like he has no agency and less nuance than in the book. Because God forbid we portray a homosexual as an imperfect, self-indulgent human being that has to put himself down a peg to see how much mistakes he made in his life. I'm so glad you put representation ahead of character writing. That worked so well for Dead End Paranormal Park. Point is, Ambrosius Goldenloin is really wasted potential. There was a character in the graphic novel that was lost in adaptation. You can write good gay characters, but they have to be characters with flaws for them to work. Was it worth removing all of his flaws just to piss off Disney? Wow, such representation. Much amaze. Also, his new haircut sucks. Whatever happened to those luscious golden locks, Bluesky, you idiots? Let me see, there's also Todd. As I've mentioned, he essentially has all the traits of Ambrose from the book because the writers were too scared to be accurate to the source material. Despite that, Todd is probably one of my favorite characters in the movie because he's actually kind of funny and shows more personality than anyone else. He actually got a good laugh out of me, not gonna lie. He's basically a Walmart brand version of the douche from Sausage Party.
No way! Jose! Yes way! Jose's dead, yo.
There's the squire that Ballister hunts down for information on the director. He's only in the movie for like 5 minutes and is used as a plot device so that Bal can get his evidence. And he sounds even more gay than Ambrosius himself. The Queen is in this film for the opening only. Despite being the queen of the city, she's only in it for as much time as the squire and has basically no impact on the story as a whole. What was the point of the Queen? Also, and this character does not appear in the film, but in the book, there's a scientist lady that Bal meets at a science fair that shows off her cool inventions from all around the outside world, and she helps out at the end. I wanted to bring this up because I pictured this character sounding with a German accent, and I thought it was really fun to read her with that accent. And lastly, the director. My oh my, I see the Disney tradition of terrible twist villains has somehow made its way into Bluesky. Maybe that's why they shut down. What, too soon? The director has got to be one of the most confusing twist villains I've seen in a movie in a while. She's like the kind of villain that Schaeferless would make fun of, because she is that bad. For one thing, her motivation as a twist villain doesn't even make sense. So the twist is she framed Ballister and killed the Queen because she wanted to keep monsters out of the kingdom? What was the point of framing Ballister if all you wanted to do was to keep the monsters out and kill the Queen? Like, if you wanted to, you could have literally sent an assassin to kill her for an easier result and then placed the blame on someone else other than Ballister. It's a lot more inconspicuous that way. You didn't need to frame Ballister unless you knew he would get his revenge. Why can't you just kill him? Like, seriously, why? If anything, her motivation should have been that she's hunting monsters throughout the city and she should have trapped Nimona the moment she came into her office as Ambrosius, or any other point in the film. Except, oh wait, that's literally what happens in the original, the capturing part specifically. Yeah, if I remember correctly, her original motivation in the book was that she was storing some kind of volatile substance that could destroy the city. At one point, she kidnaps Nimona and brings her to some laboratory to perform a bunch of wacky experiments in order to understand her power and defeat the monsters outside the wall. That experimenting in which prompted Nimona to turn to the big monster that she does at the end of the film. That plan actually sounds a lot smarter than just killing the Queen and framing it on a knight who had nothing to do with the outside world at all, or any of the inner workings of the Knights-tution. The book made the director look like
insert better movie villain here.
A truly menacing villain hiding in the shadows of a kingdom. The movie just makes her look like a dumbass, not a fucking tyrannical dictator with a cold motive against the outside world. Fucking Belos is better than you. And that is really saying something. Her reveal as the villain is also really predictable because of f***ing course it is, and she really does nothing throughout the movie other than say a bunch of spiels. I seriously don't understand the point of the Queen. You could cut her out of this movie and pretty much nothing would change. In fact, I don't even think there was a Queen in the graphic novel from what I can remember. You could also make the director like Glorious' descendant instead of Ambrosius so that her motive would make a lot more sense. I think they did that in the graphic novel, but I could be wrong. She has got to be the worst aspect in this entire movie, and probably the only part of the writing I feel the most passionate about this boring ass film. She's such a confusing mess of a villain that I don't understand how people call her good. She really needs to be studied on how not to do a twist villain on the same level as the
That was his mistake
guy, or the f***ing racer from Turbo. Because yes, I'm really pushing it that far. She is that bad. Oh yeah, and I can't forget about Glorith, as I'm sure a lot of you did. There's honestly nothing much for me to say about Glorith. She's barely in the film, and not much is known about her other than the intro narration and a montage around the third act in Nimona's childhood. Well, I would put quotation marks around childhood considering she's a shapeshifter, which makes the scene a little bit weirder, but let's not talk about that. She's pretty much used to show the audience the truth about why she vanquished the monster, aka Nimona. Spoiler alert. It was because she was told as a kid by her parents that Nimona's a monster. Amazing writing, huh folks? Like, at least Demacia has an understandable reason to discriminate against mages. Like I said, Nimona should have just been a TV show instead of a film, that way the team could be able to develop their ideas better, and see more of Nimona's childhood with Glorith. But then again, this is from the creator of Nura, so I'm pretty sure it would have been altogether, but I digress. Finally, for the voice acting, there's not really much I can say about it. Everyone does pretty good jobs with what they're given. Chloe Grace Moretz is a surprising fit for Nimona. She packs in a lot of energy for the smug-ass shit-eater, and I couldn't imagine anyone else playing her. Beats her performance in the Tom and Jerry movie. Ballister sounds exactly like how I imagined him sounding from The Page, British accent and all, though I picture Ballister with a voice like Hugo Weaving's in V for Vendetta. The only performance in this movie that doesn't click with me is Eugene Lee Yang as Ambrosius. He's just kinda whatever, and he doesn't try anything interesting with the voice. Like, when I read the book, I pictured Ambrosius with a charming, flamboyant voice reminiscent of Prince Charming from Shrek 2. Because I thought it fit his character perfectly in the book. But since he doesn't have that personality, his performance is just kinda bland as hell. Word of advice, don't hire YouTubers in your animated movies. That shit peaked when Cartoon Network hired Tobuscus for Annoying Orange and Sony added the Smosh guys in the Angry Birds movie. I can't believe it, but these 7 writers for this 90-minute animated feature lost to 1 while they were in college. How do you do this? How do you make a movie even more bland than the source material? Oh yeah, you're the studio behind Ice Age 5, so I should have expected less from you. Well, you also did Ice Age 4, and Rio 2, and Ferdinand, and, okay, you get the point, but that's Nimona for you. It reminds me a lot of how Hollywood took World War Z from a retrospect on an in-universe zombie war and just made it into a generic-ass zombie movie. Like, by comparison, this movie makes the okay at best comic book look like it was written by Alan Moore. I'm pretty sure there's a good movie in here somewhere, but for the most part, I really fell out with this one after the first 10 minutes. It's just f***ing boring. Despite the animation, the story is poorly paced, the ideas aren't executed well, the villain is ass, and overall it's just really boring to watch. Well hey, at least it's still watchable than this garbage. So at the midpoint in the story, Ballister and Nimona are able to capture the Squire after scaring him off with a demon baby form, and force him to tell the truth about the Queen's murder. So of course the Squire spills the beans and reveals the director was the one who sabotaged Ballister's sword on the day of his knighting, which doesn't make sense to Bal as much as it doesn't to me. Oh yeah, Nimona scares him off with the baby form because funny, apparently. Ballister can't upload this video to the internet because it will damage the Knightstitution, even though he does the exact same thing like 10 minutes later. Wonderful writing, by the way. Anyway, after that fine revelation, we get this joke with like Ambrosius where he's screaming and then it just cuts to the real world because it was just imaginary. Didn't they do that in that Ben Stiller movie about imaginary scenes? Our dastardly duo finds the director and the gay Asian YouTuber to tell the truth, and hopefully Bao will get his revenge. Also, this fight scene that happens after is the only scene in the movie where the frame rate drops to give it some flair, so I hope you animation fans can cherish this while you can as much as you cherish panic attack scenes. Ballister fights his dick buddy to tell him to snap out of it. Nimona turns into a dragon and throws up some cereal that causes the frame rate to tank, like a Gary's Mod thing.
Crispy! Hope you brought milk!
And then she sees a child, and this is where she draws the line at murdering people. Back at the lair, she has a sob about how people in this kingdom want to kill her because she's different and nobody likes monsters and other boring shit that's totally done better in other films than this. But she quickly gets over that. In fact, she's excited for Ballister's plan, which involves something they win. The next scene is of Yang Deep Yang talking to the director where he questions her, then she stabs him and reveals her motivations, meaning that she was the real villain the whole time. She framed Ballister and killed the queen because she wanted to keep the monsters out. Like I said, this plan makes absolutely no sense and only paints her as a stupid bitch villain. What more can I say other than, you're a f***ing dumbass? Speaking of stupid bitch villainy, she completely falls for Ballister's trick. Nimona was actually big gay Chinese cock if you couldn't tell by the exaggerated death, and they upload her confession onto the internet, and there's a montage that plays with riots and dancing because modern kids movie. You gotta have the characters doing epic dances to appeal to the youngins, am I right? Nothing beats Blue Sky tradition than the classic cringe dancing. Gaylord has had enough and finally decides he wants to do something for once and rushes to arrest the director, but the director shows him something interesting.
Things start to get a little
This causes modern cartoon gay lover
can afford a gender reassignment surgery
to have a meeting with Bal at a pub and tells him that he needs to get the out because they're gonna kill Nimona because, and this is a big one here, she was the monster that fought Glorith at the very beginning. Bal runs off pissed at his gay boy toy and Tri-Gay guy says that he loves Bal and shit, and then he believes him.
Man, let me tell you, this guy's a real pain in my anus.
He takes the scroll to Nimona and tries to execute her, causing her to view Bal as a traitor and runs off because third act breakup in kids movies, I guess. Ballister is arrested by Discount Douche. We then get Nimona's flashback scene. Back in the day, she loved shapeshifting, but every animal she met ran away from her because she was different. Yeah, if I was a deer and I saw another deer that looked like they got a severe sunburn, I too would turn myself to the headlights. That would all change when Nimona met a young girl named Glorith. Immediately, the two become the best of friends. Glorith even gets along with Nimona's shapeshifting because
Dude, those animals are so f***ing funny!
But the fun is cut short when Nimona's revealed to the villagers. You know, if my child was hanging around with a 1,000-year-old entity, I too would call them a monster. Gotta admit, film, that's actually kind of realistic. Glorith's villagers corner around Nimona because they don't want her to come.
I've come.
But then Nimona sets a fire off and Glorith picks up the sword and repeats the sacred words from the intro narration, meaning she was the ultimate twist villain the whole time.
You came.
Come.
Because that's the message of this film, kids. Never meet your heroes or believe in their stories. Because you never see them coming. Where have I heard that before? And then Nimona breaks.
And I'm telling you, if you're not watching the Super Mario Bros. Super Show, you're gonna turn into a Goomba!
Oh, I always hated this part.
Oh, these are pretty cool bananas.
Our great hero Nimona, traumatized by the realization that no one will see her come, has a shadowy mental breakdown and she turns into a giant monster that reminds me a lot of Venom's final form from Spider-Man Web of Shadows and the Imprisoned from Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword. You know, if I had a nickel for every time an annoying protagonist had a mental breakdown and turned to a copyright infringement monster, I'd have 2 nickels. Which ain't really a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice, right? Venomona the Imprisoned, as I will call her from now on, goes on a blind rampage throughout the city, like she's playing Rampage Total Destruction.
They're eating children! Children!
But she's not after the director like you would think, oh no. She's after the statue of Glorith smack dab in the center of the city. All while the knights try to fight her off and she emits these suicide mouse screams that are integrated into her roar. I thought that detail was pretty cool. Everyone else tries to help the city evacuate and the director comes up with a plan to use the giant cannon on the city walls to destroy Nimona, which will kill thousands in the process. Not like she cares because she just wants the monster gone. Not Daniel Howell in the middle of this realizes the director is an asshole and so changes sides. Woohoo. When Venomona the Imprisoned finally does get to the statue, she... Well, it looks like she's gonna game it herself, but I'm gonna keep the gag going and pretending that she's gonna morph all over Glorith like an anime action figure. She stands on her hind legs, does a Five Nights at Freddy's scream, and tries to drive the sword through her chest. But then Bal comes in and says something nice to Nimona, and she turns back. Remind you of anything? Nimona hugs Ballister, comforted by his presence, and everyone agrees that they might have been wrong the whole time and that they should change. But because the director hasn't done anything villainous this whole movie, she fires a green laser and gets ready to fire the great cannon at Nimona. And then Nimona hatches another plan. Without hesitation, she turns into a phoenix-like creature and sacrifices herself to destroy the cannon. Superman, anyone?
Hey boss, be right back.
I'm gonna come! Skip it up!
So she's dead. Rip. And the wall has been breached, revealing the outside world for what it really is. A flat 2D JPEG. Cut to the next day, we get narration from Ballister about happily ever after, mirroring Nimona's at the beginning of the film. And then we get the moment that nearly put this film in the gutter.
That's it. That was just men having gay sex!
All that trouble and 8 years of development was for a kiss. I hope it was worth it.
Yes, and you a lesbian girl, me too.
Now the city is rebuilding itself and honors Nimona and Ballister, even though Nimona just happily slaughtered a bunch of knights. Shut up and love her, damn it! And so, Bao returns to his lair and redecorates it in honor of the adventures he had with his beloved sidekick. He then hears a knock on the door, and...
Hey, boss.
Holy... Yeah, I didn't edit that, that's literally how this movie ends. Spider-Man Homecoming, anyone? What the f- To compare to the graphic novel One Last Time, the ending in that book I think was much better and more subtler than the film. It did pretty much the exact same thing as the movie with like the monster and but it ended with Ballister being put in a hospital following the incident, and Nimona wandering off to do her own things in the city, implying that she did come back to life, while Ballister makes up for lost time with Ambrosius. I actually like that ending more because it shows the two moving on from all the trouble they've been through. Nimona could finally express herself in the kingdom that won't resent her, and Belle gets to choke on Ambrosius' nightly golden cock, like that one scene from Austin Powers' Goldmember. But once again, they make it generic and played out by doing a knockoff of Monsters Inc. and Spider-Man Homecoming's ending. I hope it was worth it. Nimona was a really disappointing experience for me. I genuinely wanted to enjoy this film. It seriously sounds like the kind of movie I would enjoy. I really wanted to like a Bluesky movie again, but in the end, I just came out really bored. Nimona is far from the masterpiece that everyone says it is, in my opinion. Despite its decent animation, the story is poorly paced and confused, the characters are either flat or annoying, the villain is terrible, and yeah, is it terrible? No, far from it actually. But is it better than Sausage Party? Well, yeah, anything is better than Sausage Party. Everyone online is already clamoring about how great this movie is, which is probably the most praise I've ever seen given to a Bluesky movie in the last 10 years, and probably more attention to the company in general. Much of the film's praise is pointed towards its LGBT content, and that's great and all, but that doesn't mean I have to love the movie like everyone else. For a movie to earn my love, it has to be good, which this is not. I didn't even think V for Vendetta was going to be that good until I watched it just to compare it to Nimona. Much like the title character and her plight about not expressing herself, I feel like at any moment the fans are going to come rushing at me to drive a sword through my heart for stepping out of line. It makes me feel more like a martyr for expressing my honest opinions on this film. At the end of the day, we can all be thankful that this film was able to see the light of day. The sad reality is the entertainment industry simply doesn't care how much work you put into a product so much as they do about making money or writing off taxes or playing it safe so they can wank off to China. This movie's development story is fascinating and its comeback equally so. The fact Annapurna was able to save this movie and find it a new home is admittedly incredible. Regardless of the movie's quality, it's really somewhat enlightening to see this movie out and cementing itself into the minds of the masses. Even though it'll probably be forgotten in a month from now. It's like bringing an extinct animal back from the dead. At least Bluesky can finally rest knowing their last movie didn't become lost media. And who knows what comes next. Maybe if this movie keeps getting popular online, Netflix will revive some other cancelled animated film like they did with Vivo to distract you from how they mistreat their animated shows. Me personally, I'd be down if they'd revive one of DreamWorks' cancelled films like Larrikins, or Monkeys of Mumbai, or the Plants vs. Zombies movie, or the Edgar Wright Shadow movie. Or how about Sony's Medusa, or the Popeye film. Or maybe they'll just do a Disney deal with Ice Age and join in the milking of Bluesky's corpse. Right now, as of writing this script, there are no plans for a sequel to Nimona, but maybe they'll turn it into a franchise with a sequel. Or maybe they'll make Nimona into the TV show that it should have been in the first place. Or even just give it a video game. But hey, you know, that's just a theory. To bring this video to a close, that was my opinion on Nimona. If you like this film, then fine by me. But if you want a better animated movie centered on a villain trying to do good, you could just go watch The Bad Guys or Megamind. Bluesky fans and animation fans who might not have read the book might enjoy this film, and good for them. But as someone who surprisingly enjoyed the book for what it was, and wanted this to be Bluesky's last hurrah, I should have expected less from the studio behind Ice Age Collision Course. To bring this video to a close, I'm gonna have to rate this film a heroically rivalrous 4 out of 10. If you're curious, the book is a 6 out of 10. That's all from me, folks.